right, listeners. Get ready for a deep dive into a chapter that might just revolutionize the way you think about relationships.
Buckle up. It's a wild ride.
It's all about this idea of frailing. And no, it's not a typo.
No frailing. It's a fascinating concept.
So what is it all about?
Well, this chapter argues that the key to smoother, more successful interactions lies in tuning into the unique characteristics and motivations of the people you're dealing with.
So it's not about bending people to our will.
Nope, not at all. It's about understanding them on a deeper level.
Sign me up for that.
Yeah.
But how does frailing actually work?
The core idea here is that you can actually use other people's inner intention, what they deeply desire to help achieve your goals.
Okay, that sounds a little manipulative, I'm not going to lie.
I hear you. It definitely can sound that way at first, but it's not about trickery or coercion at all.
So how do we avoid being manipulative?
It's about understanding that we're all connected on an energetic level. When you tap into that, things start to flow more effortlessly.
I'm intrigued. Tell me more about this energetic connection.
The chapter calls this outer intention, this force that works in the background to align circumstances in your favor.
So instead of trying to force things to happen, I'm working with the natural flow of energy.
Precisely. You got it.
Do you have an example?
Absolutely. Think of it like trying to push a river upstream.
That sounds exhausting.
Exactly. It's exhausting and ultimately futile.
Okay, I get that. But I'm still a little fuzzy on how this outer intention thing actually works in real life. Can you give me a real-world example?
Sure. The chapter uses this really interesting analogy of a woman who wants to get married, but instead of pressuring her partner or trying to manipulate him into proposing, she shifts her focus to truly understanding his needs and fulfilling them within the relationship.
So she's not giving up on her goal. She's just approaching it from a different angle.
Exactly. And what happens? By focusing on his needs, she inadvertently creates the very conditions that make him want to marry her.
Wow. So her goal is achieved not through force, but as a natural consequence of her actions. That's pretty mind-blowing. Yeah. So it's not about giving up on what you want. It's about understanding how your desires can be fulfilled by fulfilling the desires of others. That's a total paradigm shift.
It is. And the chapter emphasizes that this principle isn't just for romantic relationships.
Oh, right.
It applies to all kinds of interactions, work, family, friendships, even those brief encounters you have with strangers throughout your day.
So how do we actually do this frailing thing? It sounds kind of mystical.
Well, the chapter breaks it down into some very practical techniques. It's less about mystical powers and more about a subtle shift in your awareness and how you approach interactions.
Okay. I'm ready to learn those techniques. Let's hear them.
Let's do it. So the first technique is active listening.
Active listening. Yeah, I've heard that one before.
Yeah, but there's a reason it's so popular. It's incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
When you're truly actively listening, you're stepping outside of your own thoughts and focusing entirely on the other person.
It's about being present.
Right. Exactly. It's about putting down your phone, making eye contact, and really absorbing what they're saying, both verbally and non-verbally.
Okay. So more than just waiting for my turn to talk.
Much more. It's about picking up on the subtle cues, their energy, their tone of voice, their body language. That's how you start to attune to their frequency, as the chapter puts it.
So active listening is kind of like the foundation for frailing.
You could say that. It's how you gain that deep understanding of the other person.
And once you have that understanding...
Then you can move on to the next technique, finding their forte.
Forte. Like what they're good at.
Yeah, kind of. It's more about what they're passionate about, what truly lights them up. It could be a hobby, a cause, a certain topic.
So if someone is really into, say, ancient history, I should ask them about that.
Exactly. Engage with them on their forte. You'll see their energy shift.
Yeah.
They'll become more animated, and they'll start to associate those positive feelings with you.
That makes sense. So we've got active listening and engaging with their passions. What else?
This one might surprise you. The power of a name.
Just using their name. Really?
I know, it sounds simple, but trust me, it's powerful. When you use someone's name frequently in conversation, it creates a sense of recognition and connection.
Like you're acknowledging them as an individual.
Exactly. You're showing them that you see them, you hear them, you value them, and on a deeper level, it reinforces their sense of self.
Okay, I'll admit I underestimated the power of a name. I'm adding that to my frailing toolbox.
Good. And here's another one that might surprise you. Disarming directness.
Disarming directness. What is that?
It's about being authentically yourself, dropping your guard and being open.
So being vulnerable, isn't that a little risky?
It can feel risky. but the rewards can be huge. When you show up authentically, it gives other people permission to do the same.
I see. So it's about building trust.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And finally, the chapter talks about expressing genuine liking.
Also just being nice.
Well, it's more than just being polite. It's about genuinely appreciating the other person for who they are, noticing and acknowledging their positive qualities.
So sincere compliments.
Exactly. And the key word here is sincere. People can spot fake flattery a mile away.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But when the appreciation is genuine, it creates a positive feedback loop.
Right. And this all ties into the energy dynamics at play in relationships, which is something the chapter explores as well.
Energy dynamics. Now we're getting into the good stuff. Tell me more.
Well, the chapter introduces this concept of beneficial visualizations.
Like manifesting.
It's similar, but with a focus on the other person. It's where you visualize them experiencing something that brings them joy and fulfillment.
So I'm not visualizing what I want. I'm visualizing what would make them happy.
Exactly. It's a pretty radical shift in perspective.
But how does that work? Am I sending telepathic messages or something?
Well, the chapter doesn't go into the scientific details of how it works, but it does explain that we're all connected on an energetic level and that our thoughts and emotions can influence the energy field around us.
Okay. So maybe not telepathy, but my thoughts and visualizations are still affecting the energy of the interaction.
Exactly. Think about it. We all know that our mood can affect the people around us.
Right. Like if you're in a bad mood, it can bring everyone down.
Exactly. So imagine the opposite. You're holding this positive image of the other person experiencing joy. What do you think that does to the energy of the interaction?
It would probably make things more positive and uplifting.
Exactly. That's the power of beneficial visualizations.
Okay, I like that. A lot more empowering than just crossing my fingers and hoping for the best. But let's bring this down to earth for a minute. How about a real-world example?
Yeah, like the job hunt.
The job hunt.
Yeah.
The dreaded job hunt.
It
can be so stressful.
It can. But this chapter actually suggests that Frailing can make it a lot easier.
Really?
Yeah, it's about shifting your perspective from getting a job to giving something valuable to a potential employer.
Okay, how do I do that?
It starts with choosing wisely. Focus on jobs that genuinely resonate with you, not just the ones with the biggest paycheck or the fanciest title.
So finding a job I'm actually excited about.
Exactly, and that passion will come through in your application and your interviews.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But what about the resume? That's always the worst part.
Well, the chapter suggests crafting your resume with outer intention in mind.
Outer intention? So how do I do that?
It means tailoring it to specifically address the employer's needs, using their language, highlighting how your skills and experience can help them achieve their goals.
So I'm not just listing my accomplishments. I'm framing them in a way that shows how I can solve their problems.
You got it. You're speaking their language, showing them that you understand their needs and how you can fit into their vision.
This is brilliant. So it's not about me. It's about how I can help you.
Right. And the chapter goes on to say that the interview should be seen as a chance to connect with the interviewer and the company.
Oh, so it's not about begging for a job. It's about having a conversation.
Exactly. It's about showing genuine interest in their goals and challenges, asking insightful questions, really listening to their responses.
So the interview becomes a collaboration.
You could say that. It's about exploring a potential partnership and seeing if it's a good fit for both of you.
I love that. It takes the pressure off. We've covered a lot of ground today. Frailing techniques, energy dynamics, a new approach to job hunting. My mind is officially blown.
It's a lot to take in, but hopefully it's been helpful.
It definitely has. But before we wrap up, do you have any final wisdom nuggets to share from this chapter?
I think the most important takeaway is that it's not about manipulating others or forcing outcomes. It's about aligning yourself with the natural flow of energy and allowing things to unfold organically.
It's about going with the flow. But that doesn't mean we just sit back and do nothing, right?
No. It's about taking aligned action, but doing so in a way that feels effortless and joyful.
I like that. Effortless and joyful.
Yeah.
So how about a final thought to leave our listeners with? Something to ponder as they go out into the world and start experimenting with these principles.
I would say imagine the possibilities if you consistently applied these Frailing techniques in all of your interactions. How might it transform your relationships? What doors could it open?
That's a great question to ponder. And on that note, I think we'll wrap things up for today. Okay, so we've talked a lot about the positive side of Frailing. Tuning into someone's frequency, finding their forte, expressing genuine liking, all that good stuff. But what about when things get a little tougher?
What do you mean?
Well, what about when you're dealing with someone who's being difficult? Or maybe they're just plain wrong. Does Frailing still work in those situations?
That's a really great question. And it brings us to another important technique from the chapter, acknowledging rightness.
Acknowledging rightness.
Mm.
So even if someone is being a total jerk, I'm supposed to just agree with them.
Not exactly. It's not about blindly agreeing with everything they say. It's more about recognizing and validating their perspective, even if you don't completely agree with it.
Okay, I think I get it. But can you give me an example? Let's say someone is ranting about some crazy conspiracy theory. Do I just nod along and say, yeah, you're right?
Of course not. It's not about endorsing bad behavior or false information. It's about finding a kernel of truth in what they're saying and acknowledging that.
Okay, I'm still a little confused. Can you walk me through it?
Sure. Let's say someone is complaining about how their boss is totally incompetent and unfair. You might not agree with their assessment of the boss, but you can still acknowledge their feelings.
So I could say something like, it sounds like you're feeling really frustrated and unheard. That must be tough.
Exactly. You're validating their emotional experience without necessarily agreeing with their interpretation of the situation.
I see. So it's like disarming them with empathy.
Right. And by acknowledging their rightness in some way, you're fulfilling their inner intention to feel heard and understood.
So it's not about being a pushover or giving in. It's more like using empathy strategically to kind of smooth things over.
Precisely. And you know what's interesting? Often when you acknowledge someone's rightness, it takes the wind out of their sails.
Yeah, I can see that. If you're expecting an argument and instead you get understanding, it throws you off balance.
Exactly. And it creates an opening for a more constructive conversation.
This whole concept of frailing is really fascinating. It's like a secret weapon for better relationships.
It kind of is. And the best part is, it's not about manipulation or trickery. It's about working with the natural flow of energy and creating those win-win situations.
It's about realizing that we're all connected and that our interactions really matter.
I love that. And when you approach your relationships with that kind of awareness, it changes everything.
It opens up all sorts of possibilities for connection, for collaboration, even in those challenging situations.
Exactly. That's the power of frailing.
Well, I think that just about wraps up our deep dive into frailing. It's been quite a journey.
It has. And I hope our listeners are feeling inspired to try out some of these techniques in their own lives.
Me too. And remember, even small changes in your approach can make a big difference.
Absolutely. So pay attention to those subtle ways you can tune in to the people around you. Practice that active listening. Express genuine liking. Acknowledge their rightness. And see what happens.
We'd love to hear about your experiences. So be sure to share your aha moments and insights with us on social media.
And until next time, keep exploring, keep connecting, and keep diving deep.
See you next time.